is the Pittsburgh Penguins. Pittsburgh just completed its 56th season in the NHL, was established on June 5th, 1967. During the season, Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang each played in their 1,000th NHL game, joining Crosby as the only players in franchise history to accomplish this feat while playing all 1,000 games for the Penguins. They were eliminated from playoff contention on April 12, 2023, after the Islanders beat the Canadiens, missing the postseason for the first time since 2006, which is crazy. It was almost always guaranteed that Pittsburgh would make the playoffs, and ending the longest active playoff appearance streak among 4 major North American sports leagues at 16 years. Consequently, the Dodgers of the MLB, making playoffs every year since 2013, now owned the longest active playoff streak in American professional sports. Meanwhile, the Bruins and Maple Leafs now own the longest active streak in the NHL. The Pittsburgh Penguins finished 5th in the Metro and 9th in the conference, just barely, and I mean barely, missing that playoff 8 spot. 2022-23 record was 40-31-11, 23-13-5 at home, 17-18-6 on the road. Goals for is 262, goals against 264. GM is Ron Hextall. Coach
since been fired.
Do what?
Yeah, Hextall since been fired.
Oh.
Yeah.
Coach is Mike Sullivan. Captain, the captain, Mr. Crossbar, Sidney Crosby. Oh, wrong sport. Sidney Crosby. Alternate captains, Chris Letang and Evgeny Malkin.
Evgeny Malkin.
Okay. Playing at PPG Paints Arena. Goal leader is Jake Gensel, with 36. Assists and points are owned by Sidney Crosby with respectively 60 and 93. Penalty minutes, Malkin with 82, plus minus is between Sidney Crosby with plus 8 and Pierre-Olivier Joseph with plus 8. And looks like Tristan Jarry is your top goalie because he had 24 wins last year and a goals against average of 2.90. So you can basically say 3 goals. Regular season is roughly the most balanced, and that's why I'm saying they just barely missed the playoffs last year. 4-4-1 in October, 6-4-3 in November, 8-3-2 in December, which is where you want to have the most success. 5-5-3 in January, which is where you probably lost it. 6-5 in February, 7-7-1 in March, 3-3-1 in April. With that being said, I think this team is perfect where they're at. They finished at 9th. All they got to do is have a little bit more success, and you can start that playoff streak all over again. I think we will see Pittsburgh make the playoffs. And I think we can see them start the streak again. I think they could almost make a deep run as well. But I turn it over to you as you are the resident Penguins all-knowing gentleman.
All right. Just to give some context about what happened this offseason, it's crazy to believe that we would see the Penguins missing the playoffs in the first time in which Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin have each played a full 82-game season at the same time. Normally, we would think of the Penguins missing the playoffs as a result of the core getting old and unable to produce at the rate that they were previously. But this case was more of a mix of inconsistent goaltending, subpar defensive play, and subpar bottom 6 forward depth. this team was relying heavily on the top 6 forward core and Chris Letang. That top 6 forward core being Crosby, Malkin, Jake Gensel, Ricard Raquel, Brian Rust, and Jason Zucker. Zucker is now in Arizona. And at one point, we had the worst third line in the league between Brock McGinn, Jeff Carter, and Kasperi Kapanen. The only one who remains from that putrid third line is Carter, who is 38 years old and on the last year of his contract. This is a Hextall signing after he saw some flashes in a short stint in 2021. I can understand about the 1 year of brilliance, one short half year of brilliance from Carter in the time he was acquired at the 2021 trade deadline. But at the time he was 36 and had something left in him. It feels like Carter's operating on an empty tank. But this is besides Jeff Carter. Many mistakes were made under Ron Hextall, such as, I just can't fathom how many mistakes that he made as a GM. But Michael Granlund, boy, did he fall off. From 34 or so points with the Nashville Predators before he got traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins, only to have 5 points in 21 games in the rest of the season. That's a big-time wolf. And since then, Hextall has been fired alongside President of Hockey Operations Brian Burke. In comes Kyle Dubas, who's been appointed to both positions. He stepped down as general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs after the contract was not renewed of him. And immediately he starts pulling off wizardry in the offseason. Start with Riley Smith, who won a Stanley Cup with the Vegas Golden Knights. Not only does he bring in that offense and recoups to that loss of Zucker, but also brings to that much-needed penalty killing, having scored 5 goals shorthanded, more than the entire Penguins team combined, shorthanded all season last year. So that brings in that much-needed second-line forward that the Penguins need to take over for the loss of Zucker. The downside is that Jake Gensel missed the first month of this season because of ankle surgery. The recovery timetable at the time of the surgery that he had was 3 months. So he'll miss the first month. So it's not the worst thing in the world. And thankfully so for my Penguins. So, and Dubas is also short out the bottom 6 forward depth with the additions of Noah Chari, Lars Eller, Vinny Nostroza, Andreas Janssen, who primarily is Achari and Eller, and also Matt Nieto. Nieto, Achari, and Eller have one thing in common: defensive-minded guys. Nieto is not a physical guy, but how he uses his defensive game is more of his stick. Achari can also chime in offensively as well, and Eller, even though he isn't chiming in at the offensive rate that he used to, he can contribute in a fourth-line role, and that's more fit for him. Ryan Graves makes up for the loss of Brian Dumoulin, and to be honest, this is an upgrade. Dumoulin's defensive game wasn't the same as it was before, back when the Penguins won back-to-back Stanley Cups. Graves basically is Dumoulin and the Penguins won back-to-back Stanley Cups, as Graves has a reputation for being a defensive defenseman. Tristan Jarry is the big question mark because he was as a goaltender with the Penguins this past season. He has a high ceiling, but at the same time, a low floor. So he's basically roll the dice to see what you can get. Well, on that front, it was a little quiet until the big fish. Enter Erik Karlsson, acquired for a hefty amount in a free team trade between the Penguins, San Jose Sharks, and the Montreal Canadiens that also saw the Penguins land Rem Pitlick. Though Karlsson, he immediately boosts the defensive core on the offensive side. He's not a defensive guy, but that's not what the Penguins are acquiring him for. They're looking for offense, and he improves the team and the guys around him no matter where he goes. He's the first defenseman since Brian Leach in 1992 to record 100 points in a season. And because of that, he won the Norris Trophy. I'm not even mad about that. I am so impressed and so stoked that we're getting a defenseman of that caliber onto a team. It's the first time the Norris Trophy winning defenseman got traded in the offseason. It's insane to think about. So playoffs are certainly a realistic chance there. And this season for the Penguins has to be the highest that Penguins fans, myself included, are feeling since the Cup winning years. Let's go.
Let's go, Penguins. Yes, I do think, again, this team having been on the verge of making the playoffs, I think we can see a push to get over the top and just the Penguins get in again. Because, I mean, the NBA playoffs is nothing without LeBron James. The NHL playoffs are not the same without the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, it feels like there's a similar point, a case in point that Sidney, whenever you think the Stanley Cup playoffs, you think Sidney Crosby, you think Alex Ovechkin. All the times when the Penguins and Capitals crashed against each other, and I swear we'll get to the Capitals soon, but the Penguins, 16 years straight and 3 Stanley Cups out of it. This is one remarkable run.
Oh, yeah, 100% for sure.